Jenny Sparks, issue 7, Tom King writing with Jeff Spokes on the art. Well, this will be an interesting conversation, if nothing else, because we've been a little bit more lukewarm in the last couple of issues of this. But it is a Tom King book, so it's got a lot of things going on. This issue does away with the flashbacks, which, to be fair, I'm not surprised, because issue 1 didn't have them either. It feels like a bookend thing to just focus on the here and now for this book. But all the middle issues had the flashbacks to different political or not even political, but just worldwide events that are notable.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's effectively mostly at the bar, Jenny talking to Captain Atom, and the dance continuing, and the big real beats being all of the characters. Because the end of the last issue, of course, is that he made the world disappear outside the bar. It's just a white void outside the door. And the characters, the hostages, realize, wait a minute, did you just kill everyone we care about? You know, the bartender's like, did you just kill my dog? And this realization kind of like gets people heated, various things, and basically all the hostages kind of defy Captain Atom over the course of several pages, where they kind of start to not give a shit about what he'll do to them, and Captain Atom's confused why they're not being thankful because he saved them. Everyone else is dead, but all they care about is the fact that they've lost everyone they care about, which makes sense to us, makes sense to just about anyone but Captain Atom, who thinks you should be thanking me because I'm your god and I saved you. So yeah, and then finally Jenny, because he kills them all. He kills all the hostages. We see them all like burning as skeletons. And then Jenny kind of just says, okay, when are you going to kill me? And he's like, soon. And she kind of goads him into it, to the point where, you know, she even sort of says she's too much of a coward to just walk out into the void and die. But he does ultimately kill her, right? There's a whole big moment where she keeps talking about this this woman, Virginia Woolf, from like World War II, and how she ended up killing herself because she couldn't go through another disaster like that, and you know, she couldn't fight the tide. And Jenny used to think, oh, but the tide, like, we won. We beat the tide that time. But she's over the century since then almost, she's realised, oh no, she was kind of right. The tide wasn't stopping. The tide was always going to keep coming. And yes, obviously what King's talking about here is that, yeah, fascism's still a thing, right? Like, you know, the struggle that people felt back then is something that we're still kind of dealing with in different ways, right? And hopefully it's never the exact same way, right? Hopefully it never comes to that, but we're still kind of dealing with some of the ideas of that, if nothing else. And he kills her. He kills Jenny. He kind of stands there, not really sure what to do, and then he kind of like snickers and says, "I see," and snaps his fingers. And all of a sudden, the Justice League are back. Jenny's back, and like all the world's back to normal. The hostages are fine. And she kind of has to explain to the Justice League, as we see all these hostages go back to their lives and, like, you know, make changes in their lives. And the ultimate sentiment of the book is that Captain Atom realized that he could keep rebuilding the world as many times as he wanted, but the only thing that he really has control over, whether he likes to admit it or not, is himself, and whether or not he can change, because he can't just change the world. And it kind of mirrors what a lot of the hostages go through, where they all make improvements in themselves. You know, the woman who is in the affair is going to tell her husband, right? That's implied that she's going to do that. The guy who's the drunk goes back and pays off his tab at a bar, but doesn't get a drink, so on and so forth. You know, they're making improvements. Even Captain Atom is going back to the hospital to make improvements. But, you know, I think there's like a mental health message here, if nothing else, that King's trying to get across about, like, try and make yourself better, be better for yourself, be better for you, and improve and understand where you've went wrong. Because you can't really like fix the world by yourself. You're not going to do that. Nothing wrong with that message. And I think the lack of the flashback that's like specifically a political event or whatever, which is super on the nose, I think does benefit this issue, because those were the things that were starting to feel a bit too, you know, whatever. You know, I think those last few issues we were really starting to feel like it's a bit weird that they're talking about COVID. It's a bit weird that they're talking about Trump. So I do think this issue is a little bit better than those last couple. Overall, though, I do feel a little bit lukewarm on this series as a whole. You know, it's...
I still don't get what the 20th century has to do with, you know what I mean? with a lot of this, right? I get the whole point of.
Oh no, I get that because I always got that because as soon as I started talking about that back
Yeah,
in like issue 2 or 3, I got that.
yeah,
Right.
and I thought by issue 7 it would make sense,
Well, it
but
doesn't make sense about
outside.
it.
Well, no. For me here, it's I get the whole that the tide has come back around and that stuff, and it's just maybe it's just my lack of the stuff with Jenny Sparks. I just there was a lot said here that I don't feel landed for me, and like there was a whole bunch that I'm sitting here. This took me many tries to get through. Part of the reason I
Sure.
got annoyed at right because sitting down trying to focus to read it, and there's a whole bunch that does that King thing where there's just so much dialogue on the page, and it felt like at a point I was just reading a textbook and it wasn't connecting. And I didn't this issue I didn't have anything that I could tie it to, the last part when it gets to the hostages returning to their lives, I really liked all that stuff.
Oh,
That
sure.
stuff really landed, but a lot of the Captain Adam and Jenny stuff and
Okay,
all
yeah,
this
but you're moving away from what you said though before though, which
Yeah.
is what I was actually trying to like ask
Yeah.
about, which is the 20th century thing. Like for me,
Mhm.
as soon as that was brought up, all that was getting at was this idea, the end of the century, right, the 90s, and maybe
Mhm.
this just kind of works for us because we were all kids at that time, so the world
Yeah.
felt like fixed at that point. But this idea that the world felt it was in a better place, that we were like, so far removed from the bad things of World War II, and
Mhm.
things were generally feeling like they were getting better in a lot of ways. At least to some extent, it felt that, and it feels that things have gotten
Mhm.
worse this century. Like just like we've been on this kind of slide ever since, and maybe it's the danger of nostalgia of thinking that last century was just better by the end, and that we're plummeting. I think all the stuff about Jenny's century, like, oh, like she thought she could rest, but she had to come back.
Mhm.
And the 20th century, the specter of it still lingering. Like, I think to me, all that thematically made sense. And that was some of the stuff that I liked early on in the book. Uh, I do agree, though, that a lot of the Jenny Captain Atom back and forth this issue wasn't quite clicking for me.
Yeah.
Like that I absolutely agree with. Because I think it's one of those things where, like, when like and to be fair, King has far more hits with me now than misses, right? Let's make this clear. I have loved the vast majority of what I've read from King at DC at this point. Couple of notable exceptions, but for the most part, I've loved
Yeah.
his stuff, and like not just liked it, like it's like the best book coming out when they're coming out often. So I do not want this to be shade on Tom King in general, but I think this book for us, as we were getting towards the back half of it, one, it felt like the central story in the bar was a little too like one note, and the flashbacks, which were kind of the bulk of the book at a certain point, were just getting just too weirdly like real world. Like it's just actual events from recent history just felt very strange to me. So all of this theorizing about what a god is just felt a little bit. I don't want to say pretentious,
Yeah.
right?
But
I think that's
what
a
other
harsh
word are you
word,
going to use? You know?
but it definitely felt a little bit like, oh, like we're trying to make a point here, and we're trying to talk around it a little bit by sort of talking about how, because I think Captain Atom in a lot of way represents frustrations that we all have, and that we want to like take control, and realizing that we can't, right? I think like that's the weird thing here. I don't think Captain Atom represents some powerful figure. I think he represents us, like, and how each of us feel, and how at a certain point we want to just like destroy everything around us because, like, or whatever. Like, it's about that feeling of like, oh, like we're in a place where there's no hope and we can't fix anything, and or that initially leads to him wanting to just like force it and like take control of everything. But then even that doesn't work. So I get the broad ideas and themes that King is hitting here. But I think part of it is that maybe I never truly like fell in love with the character of Jenny, because I don't have any attachment to her. So like her whole thing about wanting a light, and then at the end saying, "Oh, sometimes you have to find your own," that felt a little bit like hokey and on the nose to me, because I'm like, oh, all right, sure, like I get it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the Jenny character too. That I don't have anything to attach to. So, and that makes it kind of tough to read through. I didn't think about the Captain Atom stuff like that. That it was representing kind of our frustrations with everything, and then going back and seeing that, and maybe that's why we don't attach to Jenny as much because we're supposed to be attaching more to Captain Atom in that experience. But if that's the case, then what's with all the flashbacks with Jenny going through all the traumatic stuff that we experienced the last 25 years?
No, I mean, I think you're supposed to still like sympathize with her side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's meant to be a one-sided thing at all.
Yeah.
So it's just it's frustrating because like there's no reason because again, this is another thing that King has done repeatedly. He has taken characters I've known little about or cared little about and made me care about them. So this is not a problem of just not knowing the history of Jenny Sparks.
Yeah.
Like King, like the assumption is that King would make us care because he's proven that he can do that multiple times. So that is a failure of the book. It's not like a broad thing where you're saying, oh, like, you know, you can't like a book with a character in it if you don't already know the character. That's ridiculous. Like, you have to start somewhere. The character has to like make you like them at some point. And I just don't think this book is, and that's the thing, is people who do know Jenny Sparks seem to hate this book right away.
Yeah.
So it's not even like it was working for them either, because apparently she's not, you know, exactly like she was back in the day. So yeah, definitely mixed. I think there's some good craft happening here, right? For sure. There's some decent art.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, when she, you know, goes out and, you know, she goes to the door and everything's all white and everything, that looks really cool because up to that point we've had these split up panels, you know, done along the line. So to see just this big, huge image of just nothing, and it really makes that stand up. And then when we get to all the hostages and it's 5 panels across or down.
Yeah.
In each page, it progresses a little bit more. I thought that was all handled really well.
And I think that mirrors issue 1. I want to say there was a lot of issue 1 where it was like they each had like a row in each page for several pages. I think that was like a way they were doing it.
You know, so again, the craft's there. I just the message, I guess, there just didn't land throughout. So, you know, it's just kind of frustrating.
Well, I think the message is fine in terms of what the message is. It's just that the writing didn't make it hit. So, yeah. It's a shame that this is the one that's so mixed, but hey, luckily Wonder Woman is on fire and Black Canary minis doing great so far. So, I mean, like, hey,
for sure.
Once in a while there'll be maybe one that doesn't quite work, and I mean, that's fine.
You brought up about him doing characters that we know next to nothing about. I mean, that's all Danger Street was.
Yeah, Danger Street was like 10 of them, and I cared about all of them by the end.
Exactly. And then stuff with Human Target. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, Human Target's a good example. Yeah,
we're familiar with, but Christopher Chance we're not. And that we ended up really caring about Christopher Chance and what he went through.
And while, I knew who Mr. Miracle and Adam Strange were, I definitely cared more about those characters a lot more by the end of those books than I did before I read them.
Yes. So, you know, so it's not even that. It's just, this book was just kind of, okay, as we went. Because I was much more high on it through the first 2 issues. And then as we started going...
Yeah. Issue 1 was so good. Like the way it built to the hostage situation in issue 1 was spectacular, and then it was like, okay, we're in this bar now and I'm not against the idea of being in the bar for the rest of the arc. I love something that's like a 12 Angry Men. Give me 12 Angry Men in a comic book. I'll be into it.
But you can't aimlessly do things. Like it felt like it was meandering at points.
Yes.
You know, we have to have a clear and, you know, the interactions between everybody need to make sense and all that other stuff. And I just kind of felt we were floating along in the bar, almost killing time.
Yeah, I would have much preferred, like, if they'd just done, like, okay, raise the debate and then have these hostages with Captain Atom and maybe Jenny, since she's technically the main character. Like, have them just debate and, like, try and bring arguments for and against for why he's a god or isn't a god, or why there should be a god or there shouldn't be a god, whatever the debate would be, and do a 12 Angry Men style story. Instead, it felt like a lot of the stuff in the bar was like avoiding saying things for like a good number of issues, and I think that really hurt that side of it. So, yeah, it's a shame. What are you giving Jenny Sparks issue 7, Matt?
I'm gonna give this a 6.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. There's some good things in it, but I definitely feel very lukewarm about this issue overall.
Yeah.
So, while I said I preferred it to the last couple, I think I rated it lower, but I think that's just because my opinion of the book as a whole now is kind of
Yeah.
in a
You can put
place.
that. Yeah, you can put that into focus more.
Yeah.